Hi, today we're going to be taking a very high-level look at WoodWing Studio. WoodWing Studio is our content organization, workflow, creation, and distribution tool. It's a SaaS tool, so you can see I'm working in the Chrome browser. My login credentials have been filled in by a single sign-on solution. We're going to be looking at three key components today. First is the interface. The second is the structure of content inside of WoodWing Studio. And the third is going to be the actual content creation tools themselves. So first, the interface. Most of the time, you're going to be working in either the content creation interface, which we'll look at in a moment, or here, which is our organizational and workflow interface. On the left-hand side, we have a filter. This is going to allow us to drill down into our content. At the moment, I have selected what we call a brand. My brand is RCWW for WoodWing. A brand is a workflow. It's a series of steps that any given piece of content will go through and the people it will touch before it reaches completion. Underneath that, we have what we call an issue, which is an organization of stories. For a large publication, like a magazine, you might have many stories. For a simple publication, like a marketing brochure, postcard, or business card, you may simply have one. And then the story itself is a folder, which we call a dossier. Here I'm working in a story about New Mexico, and if I drill into the New Mexico story dossier, we'll see all of the content associated with that story. Some of it is images, some of it are print InDesign documents, some of it are print in copy articles, which if you're not familiar with are the separation of the text from InDesign itself so that they can go through separate workflows, and we'll take a look at that. And then I have a Word document, which is how my original text came in, and I have some digital documents, which are beyond the scope of today's demo. And all of this content sits together in this folder, and it's from here that we can decide where it goes and see where it's been. If I open the right-hand side, I get a Properties panel, and if I select, say, my main New Mexico Story InDesign document, you'll see the publication that it's a part of, where it's been used, the different editions that it's a part of, some other information, and then finally, the status. Now, this piece of content has already moved through its entire workflow, from where it started in a design state out to a release to production. And at each of those stages, it was routed to a particular individual or group, and they did their work and then passed it on to the next stage until it finally reached completion. And there may or may not have been automation attached to each of those stages. Automation can mean things like automatic generation of PDF files, which are then routed either inside of the system or outside of the system for a specific purpose. Eventually, this will move to archive status as well. And for each type of content, it has its own path that it follows. We saw for an InDesign document, it goes from design all the way through to release to production and then archive. For the text associated with that article, it moves from text for Word, because that's where we started, with an external writer providing a Word document to me from which I took the text and put it through our copy process, down to publish, which means that it was attached to the design before the design went to its release status. Images, digital documents, Word documents all have their own workflow, and that workflow is customizable by brand. That's the essential structure of data inside of WoodWing and how it looks in the interface for the web. And this is one place that people can work. And when working here, what's great is I can not only move these documents around, but I can preview them directly inside of the browser. So I can see the content in place. I can do some markup, meaning I can go through and create sticky notes and add notes like, please change this photo, or anything else that the art director might want to drop in there, without needing a copy of InDesign on my desktop. That saves in complexity, in IT costs, and also in license costs, for those folks who actually don't need to open up InDesign, but do need to work with layouts. However, lots of people do need to work inside of InDesign, especially designers. And for those, I'm going to flip over to InDesign right now, we have an interface right inside of the application itself. You'll see there's a menu, WoodWing Studio, with a number of options. Right now are grayed out because I don't have any content open. However, I am logged in, and those are my same single sign-on credentials that I used on the website. And this integration as well gives me a panel. When I open this panel, you'll see that I'm looking at exactly the same content that I was looking at in the web browser, but this time inside of InDesign. My filter bar is now on the top instead of on the left, but it functions the same way. So I can choose my brand, drill down into my New Mexico issue, and here's all that content that I was looking at. Here's that InDesign layout, which I can preview right here. And if I wish to, I can double click on it. It'll open up inside of InDesign, and I can start working on it. And for everybody else in the system, once I've opened that piece of content, that content is something they're locked out of. They'll be able to preview it, work with the metadata, move it around through its workflow. However, the content itself is locked, and there's an indication both here inside of InDesign and inside of the browser that it is checked out and who's working on it right now in case I need to grab it from them. When I'm finished making my changes, and you can see here the note that the art director provided for me using the markup tools inside of Studio, I can go ahead and check it back in. And when I do that, I have the opportunity to change some metadata, like which edition it belongs to and anything else I may put on here, and move it along its status. Now, we're already at the end status, released to production, but let me pull it back a status and release to China and click OK. That's going to go back into the system, and it's going to create a version, meaning that I'll always have a complete history of all of the changes that happened to that file and an audit log of who made those changes and when. Another thing that I can do on the print side of things is I can actually originate this content from inside of the app. And this is the content creation piece of it. I'm going to leave the New Mexico story, but we're still in this issue. I'm just going to create a new story for this issue. I'm going to go ahead and create one of these story folders. And I'll name this White Sands. Choose all of the correct metadata. And now I have that empty dossier. I could go over to InDesign, create an InDesign document, and load it into this dossier. But I'm actually going to go ahead and do that directly from the browser itself. Again, requiring no InDesign or InDesign license. I choose Layout, and I'm presented with a number of templates. I choose the template I want to work with, choose Next, enter my metadata, and it will actually generate the InDesign document for me. It's creating a preview and a thumbnail, and then when I'm ready to work on it, I can send this using my routing tools to a member of the team, and when they receive it, and they can go ahead and click on that, and it'll open up inside of InDesign, lock everybody else out, thus checking it out, and they can get to work on this document and start it moving down its path. As part of this process, I can work separately on the layout and the text. If I have two different departments who may be separated by time and or space, and I don't want to be entering and doing my copy editing directly inside of InDesign, I can go ahead and create an article with a template that's related to the layout that I'll be working on. This is not only going to create my print article for me, it's also going to open an editor inside of the browser where I'm going to be able to enter, either by typing or copying and pasting from a Word document, the text for this article. And as I do that, and let's write a very brief story, I have the option to style this based on style sheets that are associated with the template. And this piece of content, I can move down its own workflow, text from Word, until, say, it reaches article placed. And then, when it's time, these two elements can be combined together. Here's the layout that I was working on. Here's the article. And if I just drag it over, it's going to associate the different fields in the article with the correct fields in the layout. And when I go back to edit the article is now going to represent not only the text of the article, but the layout that's actually associated with it. And at a very high level, that's really what WoodWing Studio does. From a distribution standpoint, we can now take these pieces of content that have reached a final status, and we can do a couple of things with them. We can generate PDFs and send them off to printers or color correction and so forth, and that can either be done manually or automated. And then we have a whole set of digital tools that we can use to distribute this content to all of our endpoints. And that's really a very high-level overview of WoodWing Studio. Our goal is to help you unlock your potential. I hope that this overview of WoodWing Studio gave you an idea of some of the ways WoodWing can help you organize, create, and distribute your content.